The old Victorian house on Willow Creek Road had been abandoned for nearly a decade, but even in the fading afternoon light, its dark silhouette loomed over the street like a silent warning. Windows, streaked with dust and grime, reflected the last remnants of sunlight, and the front door hung slightly ajar, creaking with every whisper of wind. No one dared enter, or at least, no one ever returned with a story that didn't sound like a nightmare. I didn't believe in ghosts, not really, not until the day I inherited my grandfather's house. My name is Lucas Bennett. I was 23, fresh out of college, and for the first time in my life, I had enough independence to explore the house that had been locked away from the world for years. The letter from my father, hand-delivered, simply said, "Lucas, you need to settle things here. There's more in that house than memories. Take care." I laughed at the vague warning, more than memories. Surely he was just exaggerating. The house smelled of old wood, mildew, and something else, something metallic, almost faintly sweet, that made the back of my throat tighten. I took a deep breath, forcing my nerves to settle, and stepped into the foyer. Dust danced in the fading light, and the air felt heavy, thick, like it wanted me to leave. Then I saw it. A door, tucked away at the far end of the hallway, smaller than the others, but impossibly solid. Its wood was dark, almost black, polished by years of neglect. A brass lock, tarnished green, glinted at me like a warning. I knew, without thinking, that this was the room. My father had never mentioned it. My mother never spoke of it. My grandfather never let anyone near it. I reached for the doorknob. My fingers trembled. A voice, soft, almost childlike, echoed in my mind. "Don't open." I froze, shaking my head, and muttered, "It's just me. Nobody's here." And then, the whispering stopped. The next night, I couldn't sleep. Every creak of the old house made my heart pound. Every shadow in my room seemed to twitch, to stretch. I kept thinking of that locked door, of the things my grandfather had hidden. My curiosity gnawed at me, until I could ignore it no longer. I grabbed a hammer from the garage the next morning. My pulse raced as I approached the hallway. Sunlight barely filtered through the grimy windows, painting the dust motes gold. The lock resisted at first, stubborn against the force, but with one final strike, it snapped. Inside, the room was colder than the rest of the house. The air smelled of iron and decay. Shelves lined the walls, cluttered with jars, bundles of cloth tied with thick rope, and dusty, indistinguishable objects that seemed to shimmer in the dim light. And there, in the center of the back wall, hung a painting. A house. Not this one. Another, by a river, painted with such vividness it seemed alive. My stomach sank. It didn't belong here, in this dark, hidden room. My fingers itched to touch it, but something told me not to. That night, I dreamed of the river. I was standing on its bank, water dark and churning, the house from the painting looming across the current. The river pulled at my feet, dragging me in. Panic flooded me, a terror so real, I woke up gasping, sweat cold on my skin. I told myself it was just a dream, just my imagination. But deep down, I knew the house, the river, the room, they were calling me, and I would answer. The next morning, the house felt heavier, as if it had been waiting for me to cross the threshold of that room. Even in daylight, shadows clung to corners, and the air seemed to move with a mind of its own. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched, though the house was empty, silent, and still. I tried to tell myself it was nothing, just nerves, just the imagination of a young man alone in an old house. But when I passed the hallway, the locked room, no, the opened room, my pulse quickened, and a shiver ran down my spine. Inside, everything seemed untouched. Dust lay thick on the shelves, the jars glinted faintly, and the painting of the river house hung there, staring at me with an unsettling clarity. I couldn't take my eyes off it. The colors were sharper than memory, the river water darker, almost black, and the house seemed alive, like it was breathing, waiting for something or someone. I turned to leave, and that's when I heard a faint scratching, soft at first, like fingernails dragging across wood. I froze, holding my breath, straining to listen. It came, again, louder, this time, from behind the painting. My heart hammered, against every instinct screaming at me to run. I moved closer, my hands trembling. The painting felt heavier than it should, and the frame was cold to the touch. I pried it from the wall. Behind it, the wall was solid, but the scratching continued, now louder, as if it were inside the very walls themselves. I stumbled back, nearly falling, and then I heard the whisper, soft, urgent, almost pleading, "Lucas, help me." I spun around. No one was there. Only the shadows danced along the floor, twisting unnaturally in the dim light. My breath came in shallow bursts, my skin prickling, every nerve screaming at me to leave the house, to leave now. But the whispers didn't stop. They grew louder, more insistent, echoing from the floorboards, the walls, the ceiling. I could feel them crawling over my skin, brushing my neck, tugging at my hair. And then, a single word cut through the noise, sharp and cold: "Stay." I bolted from the room, heart racing, crashing through the hallway. The front door was just ahead, sunlight spilling through it, promising safety. I reached for the handle, and froze. The door wouldn't budge, not an inch. The house groaned, settling around me, or maybe it was something else, moving beneath the floorboards. Shadows shifted in impossible ways, stretching, bending, reaching for me. I could hear footsteps, slow, deliberate, echoing behind me, though when I turned, nothing moved. Hours passed, though it could have been minutes or seconds. Time itself seemed to warp inside that house. The whispers grew softer now, almost gentle, coaxing me, luring me back toward the locked room. Against all reason, I found myself walking back, drawn by the painting, by the room, by the dark secret it held. Each step made my stomach twist, my mind scream, but I couldn't stop. Something inside the house had claimed me. When I reached the doorway, the room was different. The air was colder, heavier, thick with the smell of iron, and the faint trace of something sweet: decay and blood, or perhaps something worse. The painting now seemed to move, the river rippling, the house on the other side rocking, as if caught in some unseen storm. And then I saw it, a shadow, low and slithering along the floor, moving in ways no human could. It paused at the center of the room where the painting hung, and I realized with a jolt of terror that the whispers weren't coming from the walls anymore. They were coming from it. A voice inside the darkness, calling my name, promising secrets, demanding obedience. I wanted to scream, to run, to break every bone in my body and escape, but my feet were rooted to the floor. The shadow shifted, stretching, growing, forming shapes, and then, faintly, I saw a figure, hunched, old, its back to me, staring at the painting. And I knew, deep in my gut, that the figure was not waiting, it was expecting me. I couldn't move. My feet, my legs, even my hands, seemed frozen, bound by some invisible force. The air around me thickened, pressing down on my chest, making every breath a struggle. The shadow in the center of the room didn't move, not really, yet I could feel it stretching, twisting, growing, as if it were alive, feeding on my fear. Then it turned its head, slowly, deliberately, and I felt my stomach drop. The figure's face was hidden in darkness, but the edges glowed faintly red, like embers smoldering in a dying fire. My mind screamed to run, but I could not. A whisper, low and cruel, slithered through the room, wrapping around my ears. "You shouldn't have come back." The painting caught my eye. The river in it was no longer still. Waves crashed against the painted shore, and the house swayed violently, like a ship in a storm. And then I noticed the shadows in the painting. They were moving, slinking toward the windows, toward the edge of the frame. Toward me. Something cold brushed my arm, quick, fleeting, but sharp enough to send a jolt of terror through me. I realized the shadow wasn't just in the room, it was everywhere. In the corners, the walls, the floorboards, in the spaces where light refused to touch. I finally forced my legs to move, stumbling backward, crashing into the shelves. Jars toppled, glass shattering, the sound echoing like screams. The shadow recoiled for a fraction of a second, then surged forward, faster than I could comprehend, and I felt the air push against me like a tidal wave. A voice, older than time itself, deep and rasping, resonated from everywhere and nowhere. "Lucas, you belong here." I fell to my knees, chest heaving, heart hammering in my ears. The whispering intensified, dozens of voices now, overlapping, screaming, pleading, mocking, and then silence. For a moment, I thought I had survived. I opened my eyes. The room was empty. The painting hung on the wall, still, peaceful once more, or so it seemed. Then I noticed something chilling. My reflection in a small, cracked mirror across the room. It wasn't my own face. The eyes staring back were black, empty, endless, and the mouth was twisted into a smile that I had never seen on my own lips. I fell backward, gasping, and scrambled to the door, but it wouldn't budge. No matter how hard I pushed, no matter how much I screamed, the door stayed closed. The house had claimed me, and it had no intention of letting me go. And then, a sound that froze me colder than the shadow itself. Child laughing. Soft, innocent, impossibly close, coming from behind the painting. I turned, trembling, and saw movement. The painting shimmered, the river water rippling, and then, just for a second, I saw a figure standing on the other side. A girl, pale, with hollow eyes, staring at me, pointing toward the shadows. Before I could scream, everything went black. When I opened my eyes, I wasn't in the room anymore. I was outside, standing in the yard, the house looming silently above me. But something was wrong. The sky was dark, the clouds swirling unnaturally, and the air smelled of iron and smoke. The door I had entered through was gone. I was trapped, and then I heard it, faint, almost welcoming. "Welcome back, Lucas. We've been waiting." The yard stretched before me, vast, twisted, like the landscape of a nightmare. The grass was blackened, brittle under my feet, snapping with every step. Shadows moved in unnatural ways, crawling along the ground, climbing the trunks of the gnarled trees, reaching out, stretching toward me. I wanted to run, but the air pressed against me, thick, heavy, as if I were wading through water. The house loomed above, silent and patient, windows staring like dark eyes. The front door was gone. The only way forward was through the yard toward the twisted, blackened woods at the far end. I noticed them then, figures, distant, half seen through the fog. Children, pale, their faces hidden beneath long, dark hair, moving slowly, almost floating. They didn't speak, didn't blink, just pointed at me, beckoning. Their whispers curled around my mind. "Come, come, join us." Panic surged. I ran, stumbling over the dead, brittle grass. Every shadow along the path seemed to writhe, to lunge at me. Branches clawed at my clothes, scraping my arms, leaving thin, bleeding lines. I didn't dare look back. And then I heard Italo, guttural sound, coming from the house, growing louder with every step I took. It was a voice, or many voices, whispering together, chanting in a language older than the town itself. I couldn't understand it, but I felt it deep in my chest, in my bones, as if it were trying to pull me back inside. Ahead, the forest thickened. Mist coiled around the twisted trunks, obscuring everything beyond. The pale children vanished into the fog, leaving only silence. I took a shaky breath, stepping into the mist. The air changed immediately. Cold, wet, smelling of earth and decay. I could hear whispers, faint at first, then closer, circling me. They came from everywhere, yet from nowhere. I spun around, heart hammering, and caught glimpses of shadows darting between the trees, and then I saw it a small, old cabin, hidden among the twisted trunks, its roof sagging, walls cracked, windows dark. The cabin looked familiar, though I knew I had never been there. Something about it called to me, promising answers, promising danger. I moved toward it, each step heavier, my legs trembling. As I approached, the door creaked open, slowly, deliberately, as if inviting me inside. My mind screamed to turn away, but I couldn't. Something, some invisible force, was guiding me. Inside, the cabin was worse than the house. Darkness pooled in every corner, thick, almost solid. The floorboards groaned under my weight, and the walls were covered with faded, yellowed photographs, people I didn't know. Their faces twisted in silent screams, eyes black, empty dot at the center of the room. A small wooden chest sat on a table. It was old, bound with iron, and etched with strange symbols that seemed to move if I looked too long. The whispers swirled around it, urging me, tempting me. Open, open, open. I reached out, hand trembling, and felt the cold iron under my fingers. The whispers intensified, overlapping, chaotic, demanding, almost angry. I knew that opening it would change everything, and then I heard the voice again, familiar, impossible. My grandfather, Lucas, don't open it. But the voice was weak, distant, as if it were being dragged away. My curiosity, my fear, my desperation, it all collided. My fingers tightened around the latch, and I lifted it. Inside, I couldn't see it at first. The chest was dark, but a faint glow began to seep from within, casting flickering shadows across the cabin walls. Shapes moved inside the glow, shapes that shouldn't exist. Faces, hands, mouths, writhing, twisting, and then the whispers became screaming, loud, piercing, unbearable. I stumbled back, heart racing, and the cabin seemed to breathe around me, walls contracting, shadows stretching. The glow intensified, bathing me in pale, sickly light. The chest was alive, and then, with a sudden, deafening snap, the cabin plunged into darkness. Silence crashing over me like a wave. I was alone, or I thought I was. A hand, icy cold, touched my shoulder, and I realized the cabin was never empty. I froze, every nerve screaming, when the icy hand gripped my shoulder. My breath caught, cold and ragged, and I couldn't turn around. The darkness pressed against me, thick and suffocating, like the cabin itself had become alive, watching, waiting. The whispers returned, louder now, frantic, overlapping voices. Open, open, reveal, it's yours, summoning every ounce of courage or foolishness. I turned slowly. Nothing, at first, just shadows, twisting along the walls. But then, a face emerged from the darkness, pale, skeletal, yet disturbingly familiar. My grandfather. Not as I remembered him, not as the kind, eccentric man who had vanished for days at a time, but as something else. Hollow eyes, skin stretched, over bone, a faint glow tracing the edges of his frame. Lucas, the voice rasped, weak yet commanding. You shouldn't have touched it. What is this? I stammered, my fingers still on the chest. You've opened the door. The door I locked for a reason, he whispered, each word heavy, dragging against the shadows. This chest holds what should never be released. The spirits trapped. The ones I tried to protect you from. I swallowed, heart hammering. Spirits trapped in here. He nodded slowly, eyes hollow, unblinking. The river you saw in the painting. It's real. It's a boundary. A place between the living and the dead. I tried to seal it. I tried to keep it away. But now, it's calling you. They've been waiting for someone to release them. The chest rattled violently, throwing shadows across the cabin walls, and the whispers escalated into agonized screams. I stumbled back, tripping over the splintered floorboards, and the glow inside the chest intensified, flickering with shapes I couldn't comprehend. Faces, hands, mouths, reaching, writhing, trying to escape. I didn't mean to. I didn't know. I shouted, panic clawing at me. You were always meant to see this, Lucas, my grandfather's voice said, closer now, almost in my ear. But you must stop them, before they cross over. Suddenly, the shadows erupted from the chest, slithering like liquid darkness, wrapping around the cabin. And I felt the cold, biting like ice, tugging at my clothes, my skin, my very soul. The air pulsed with energy, a force so powerful it pressed me to the floor. Through the chaos, I saw movement in the shadows' faces I recognized. Friends from school, strangers I had never met, even children laughing eerily. All distorted, twisted, reaching for me. And then the whispers became words, clear, personal, accusatory. You opened it. You're the one who let us out. You will join us. I screamed, scrambling to push the shadows back, but they seemed endless, unstoppable. My grandfather reached toward me, glowing faintly, his skeletal hand brushing mine. Listen to me, Lucas. There is a way to seal them, but it will take everything you have. What? How? Tell me, I shouted, desperation slicing through the fear. You must go back to the house, to the room, the painting, the river, he rasped, each word strained. There, you will face them, alone. Only there can the door be closed, or everything will be lost. The shadows recoiled, hissing and writhing, as if they knew I had been given a choice. My grandfather's face blurred, fading, and the last thing I heard before the darkness consumed him completely was, "Be careful. They can smell your fear." The cabin fell silent, the whispers gone, replaced by a low, oppressive hum, vibrating through the floor, the walls, and my chest. The chest still glowed faintly, beckoning, waiting. I stumbled out, running through the yard, the trees twisting in impossible shapes, shadows crawling over the ground like living things. The house loomed in the distance, windows dark, silent, waiting for me to return. I knew now what I had to do. The locked room, the painting, the river, everything was connected. And if I failed, if I hesitated, the spirits would escape, and the world outside that house would never be safe again. But a new terror gripped me, the thought of facing them, alone. And as I approached the front door, the faint, chilling sound of the girl's laughter drifted through the yard, echoing, endless, and I knew she was waiting for me. I reached the house, just as the sky bled into night. The Victorian silhouette on Willow Creek Road loomed like a predator, silent, patient, watching. My legs shook, my lungs burned, but something deeper, darker, compelled me forward. I had no choice. I had to face the room, the painting, the river dot inside. The hallway stretched before me, familiar, yet distorted. Shadows clung to corners, pooling and stretching unnaturally. The air smelled of iron, decay, and something else, something sweet and rotten. The locked room waited at the far end, its door now open, the brass lock broken, the wood dark and almost black in the dim light. I paused, forcing my heartbeat to slow, my hands trembling. Every instinct screamed to run, but I stepped forward. With each step, the house seemed to breathe, floorboards creaking beneath my weight, walls groaning, whispering, murmuring my name. The room was as I had left it. Shelves cluttered with jars, cloth bundles, strange objects. The painting hung on the back wall, the river house glowing faintly, water rippling as if alive. I shivered. Then I saw movement. Shadows crawling along the walls, twisting, reaching toward the floor, toward me. Whispers, faint at first, grew louder, overlapping, insistent. "Lucas, come closer. Join us. Open the door." A cold wind swept through the room, despite the closed windows, and I felt it brush my face like icy fingers. The shadows thickened, pooling at my feet, climbing my legs, whispering, laughing, screaming. I stumbled backward, but my eyes were locked on the painting. Then I noticed the river in the painting wasn't just water anymore. Faces floated on its surface, writhing, screaming silently, eyes black, mouths twisted. And on the shore, the girl. Her hollow eyes stared directly at me, her finger pointing, beckoning me closer. I realized then what I had to do. The chest had released them. Now the painting was the key. I stepped forward, the floorboards groaning, shadows recoiling slightly, as if testing my resolve. And then, the air changed. Heavy, thick, suffocating. A low growl echoed from behind me, the shadows solidifying into shapes, twisted, humanoid, grotesque. One step, one movement, and they lunged. I fell backward, scrambling toward the painting. Hands, skeletal and clawed, reached from the floor, grabbing at my ankles, pulling, tugging. The whispers turned into screams. You cannot escape. The door is ours. I slammed my hands on the painting. The river surged violently, spilling from the canvas in a wave of shadow and light. Faces, hands, mouths, all tried to escape, clawing at the edges, reaching for me. Then I heard a voice, cutting through the chaos. My grandfather's voice, strong, commanding. Remember your training. You are the barrier. Do not falter. Training. I had never had training. And yet, something inside me shifted. A memory. A knowledge I didn't know I possessed. My hands shook as I pressed against the painting, pushing, forcing, willing it to contain the spirits. The shadows screamed, clawing at the walls, the ceiling, at me. The girl in the painting floated closer, her hollow eyes pleading, almost guiding me. I gritted my teeth, refusing to let go. Hours or seconds passed. I couldn't tell. The room, the shadows, the river, they all battled against me, and yet, step by step, I gained control. The painting stabilized, the river slowed, faces disappearing beneath the water. The whispers faded into low murmurs, then silence. I sank to my knees, trembling, gasping. The shadows were gone, or at least, they were contained for now. The painting glowed faintly, serene, almost beautiful in its quiet power. And then, a whisper, soft, chilling, from the back of the room. This is only the beginning. I looked around, heart hammering. The door to the hallway was now closed, locked, and I knew, deep in my bones, the battle wasn't over. The spirits were restrained, but not gone. The river, the painting, the room they would call again, and so would the girl. The morning after, the house felt different. Lighter in some corners, but darker in others, as if it had memories, and it was choosing which to show me. I didn't sleep. My mind was spinning with questions, and the chill from the previous night clung to my skin. I decided to explore the rest of the house. Every step echoed, louder than it should have, through the empty halls. The old grandfather clock in the foyer ticked in jagged, uneven beats, each one hammering into my chest. Dust floated in golden beams of sunlight that struggled to enter through grime-coated windows. I found the library, rows of books, some so old the pages crumbled to dust at the touch. But one caught my Aja leather-bound journal, lying on a small desk, edges frayed. The handwriting inside was unmistakable. My grandfather's. I flipped the pages carefully. The journal was filled with accounts of spirits, rituals, and warnings. He had been a guardian of sorts, a keeper of boundaries between the living and the dead. He wrote of a river, a house, and a girl trapped between worlds. He spoke of the painting, the chest, and the shadows that fed on fear, constantly seeking a way to cross over. One passage froze me cold. If the spirits ever awaken fully, only one who bears my blood can confront them. They can smell fear. They will not rest until they claim what I could not protect. The words hit me like ice. My blood Was I really the one destined to finish what he started? A sudden noise snapped me from the journal. Footsteps, slow, deliberate, coming from the hallway. I held my breath, straining to see. Shadows moved before my eyes, flickering unnaturally. The whispering returned, soft, taunting. "Lucas, find the river. It's waiting." I followed the sound cautiously, moving through the dining room into the back hall. That's when I saw it, the girl, standing at the foot of the stairs, her eyes hollow, her hair hanging like black curtains. She didn't move, only stared. Who are you?" I asked, my voice trembling. Her lips didn't move, but I heard the words in my mind. "I can help you, if you listen, if you trust." I wanted to run, to shut her out, but something about her tone, desperate yet gentle, made me pause. She floated a few steps closer, pointing toward the door that led to the yard. Beyond it, I could see the twisted, blackened forest, the cabin where I had opened the chest. "The river. It's real," she whispered, again in my mind. "It waits for you." But so do they. A chill ran down my spine. The shadows from last night were not confined to the room. They were spreading, watching, waiting for me to make a mistake. I had no choice. I had to follow her. I had to confront the river, and whatever lay beyond it. As I stepped toward the door, the house groaned around me. Dust fell from the ceiling, and for a split second, I thought I saw dozens of faces pressed against the walls, screaming silently. I stumbled outside into the yard. The forest awaited, dark and twisting. The girl floated ahead, guiding me through the fog, her eyes always fixed on the river. I could hear whispers behind me, shadowy figures moving between the trees, closing in. And then I realized I was being watched, not just by the shadows, but by something larger, older, something that had been waiting for my return for decades. I swallowed hard, fear clawing at my chest. The river, the painting, the chest, everything was connected, and now I understood. I was walking straight into the heart of it. The girl turned, her hollow eyes meeting mine. "Be ready, they will test you, and they will not forgive." And then, silently, she disappeared into the mist. The forest ended abruptly, opening to a river that should not have existed. The water was black, thick, almost viscous, reflecting no moonlight, no stars, only an endless darkness that seemed to pulse and breathe. A cold mist hovered above it, curling and twisting like living smoke. I stepped closer, my boots sinking slightly into the wet, muddy bank. Every instinct screamed at me to turn back, to run. But the girl's warning echoed in my mind. They will not forgive hesitation. The shadows were there, dancing on the river's surface, whispering, clawing at the air, reaching for me. Faces pressed against the mist, mouths opening in silent screams, eyes black and endless. I realized they were not just spirits, they were hungry, and I was standing at their feast. A soft voice called from the riverbank. "Lucas." It was the girl. She was standing at the edge, her pale skin almost glowing in the darkness. "You must cross. Only by stepping into the river will you face them and seal the door." I shook my head. "I can't. I don't know how." She raised a hand, pointing at the shadows. "You have no choice. They are patient, but not infinite. Hesitate, and they will drag you under. The chest, the painting, your grandfather. They gave you a chance. Don't waste it." My heart pounded. My legs shook. I swallowed the rising bile and took the first step into the water. Cold, dark, wrapping around my ankles, sending shivers through my body. The whispers became louder, chanting, calling, mocking. Faces appeared in the river, twisting and screaming, hands reaching up, water rippling as though it were solid. The river pulled at me, tugging, testing, trying to drag me under. I stumbled forward, grasping at the fog, gripping at anything that might give me balance. A voice cut through the chaos. "My grandfather, Lucas, trust the painting, trust the bloodline, control your fear." I closed my eyes, recalling the painting in the locked room. The river in it had been controlled, contained, bound. I focused, imagining the water contained, the faces trapped, the shadows forced back. Slowly, I felt the pull lessen, the water resist me less. I opened my eyes. The girl's hollow gaze met mine. She stepped closer, her form flickering like a candle in the wind. They will test you further. Do not falter. A shadow surged from the river, towering, massive, face twisted in rage and hunger, eyes glowing red in the mist. It lunged, water exploding around it, and I stumbled backward, but something inside me clicked. My grandfather's words, the journal, the painting, all of it. I had to face it, not run. I clenched my fists, focusing, channeling my fear into resolve. The shadow hesitated, confused, then struck again. I moved with it, dodging, countering, using the river as my guide, the painting in my mind as a map. For what felt like hours, the shadow tested me, striking, taunting, whispering, "You cannot contain us. You are ours." And then, with a sudden surge, I pushed forward, calling on something deeper than courage, something my grandfather had left in me. The shadow screamed, dissipating into mist, faces sinking below the surface, whispers fading. The river stilled, black and calm, as if nothing had ever risen from it. I collapsed on the muddy bank, exhausted, shaking, every inch of my body trembling. The girl knelt beside me, her eyes softer now, almost human. "You've passed the first trial, but it is only the beginning. The door is not fully sealed. You must return and finish what he started." The wind carried a whisper from the river, cold, faint, and unmistakably alive. "This is not over, Lucas. We are patient. We are eternal." I stood slowly, chest heaving, staring back at the calm black river. The forest behind me seemed quieter now, but I knew it was only temporary. The real battle awaited in the house, in the locked room, where the painting in the chest still held the key to everything. I took a deep breath, my fingers brushing the muddy water, feeling its cold, unnatural weight, and began the long, terrifying walk back. The house loomed as I returned, silent, still, but I could feel it shifting, alive, anticipating my next move. Every step on the creaking floorboards sounded like a gunshot in the empty halls. Shadows clung to the corners, stretching and twisting unnaturally, moving just at the edge of my vision. I passed the locked room. Its door was closed now, the brass lock gleaming faintly, as if waiting for me to try again. I took a deep breath, steadying my nerves. The girl's warning echoed in my mind. "The final trial is here. The spirits will test you fully. Do not falter." I pushed the door open. The room was worse than before. The air was thick, suffocating, the smell of iron and decay stronger. The painting hung in its place, glowing faintly, the river inside rippling violently. The chest sat on the table, bound with iron, shaking as if something inside were alive and desperate to escape. The shadows surged around me immediately, writhing along the walls, crawling across the floor, reaching for my feet, my hands, my face. The whispers screamed, overlapping, incoherent, maddening. "You opened us. You freed us. You cannot contain us, Lucas." I approached the chest, gripping the lid. It resisted my touch, thrashing violently, as if the spirits inside were fighting to remain free. I focused, recalling the river, the painting, my grandfather's journal, and the girl's guidance. My fear burned like fire in my chest, but I forced it into determination. A shadow surged from the floor. Massive, humanoid, but twisted, skeletal eyes, burning like coals. It lunged at me, and I stumbled backward, crashing into a shelf. Jars shattered, spilling their contents, strange powders, dark liquids, and objects I couldn't recognize. The shadow screamed, a sound like grinding metal, rattling my bones. I lunged for the chest, slamming it shut with all my strength. The shadow screamed, thrashing, curling, twisting, but the chest's iron binding held firm. The river in the painting shuddered, then stilled. The room fell silent, except for the low, steady hum of the house, almost like a heartbeat, and then I saw her, the girl. She stood at the edge of the room, pale, hollow-eyed, but now her gaze was filled with urgency, almost desperation. She pointed at the painting. "Finish it, or they will escape completely." I stepped toward the painting, gripping its frame, recalling every detail of the river, every face I had seen, every shadow I had faced. I focused, forcing the image of containment into my mind, willing it to hold, willing the spirits to return to the chest, to the river, to the place they belonged. The shadows surged one last time, clawing at me, screaming, whispering, twisting. I could feel them trying to pierce my mind, to drag me under, to make me falter. My vision blurred, my knees buckled, but I held on, gripping the painting, my heart pounding like a war drum. And then, with a shudder, a snap, a final scream, the shadows collapsed inward, pulled into the chest and the river within the painting. The room went silent. The air cleared. The glow faded. I sank to the floor, shaking, exhausted, chest heaving. The painting was still, the chest unmoving. The girl knelt beside me, her voice in my mind now gentle. "It is done. For now, you have contained them, but the house will. Always remember, you are the guardian now." I looked at her, heart still racing. But what if they come back? She smiled faintly, hollow and sad. "They always will, but now you know. You are not helpless." As she faded into the shadows, I realized the house was quiet, peaceful for the first time in decades. But I also knew, deep in my bones, that this peace was fragile. The river, the painting, the chest, they were all part of a balance that could be broken, if I faltered, if I failed. The house had chosen me, and the spirits would always be waiting. The house was quiet now, but the silence was heavy, pressing, filled with the memory of everything that had happened. I stood in the locked room, the chest closed, the painting still, but my heart wouldn't calm. I knew this peace was temporary. The girl's words echoed. "They always will come back, but you are the barrier." I took a deep breath, my eyes scanning the room. The shadows were gone, but I could feel them lingering, just beyond the edge of sight, waiting, patient, eternal. The river in the painting rippled faintly, a reminder that this was not just a canvas, it was a portal, a boundary, a prison. Suddenly, the air shifted. The temperature dropped, and a low hum filled the room, vibrating through the walls, the floor, my bones. Shadows crept along the edges of the ceiling, writhing, thickening. I realized they were testing me again. The chest rattled violently, the iron bindings groaning. Whispers filled the room, overlapping, desperate, demanding. "You cannot contain us forever. We will claim you. We are eternal." I clenched my fists, forcing my fear into focus. I had survived the river, faced the shadows, contained them before. I could do it again. I gripped the painting, feeling the connection, the flow between it and the chest, the river, the spirits. I whispered my grandfather's words in my mind. "Control your fear. You are the barrier. You are the guardian." The shadows surged forward, massive, humanoid, twisting faces contorted in rage. The girl appeared beside me, her hollow eyes glowing faintly. "You must bind them completely, or all is lost." I raised my hands, placing them on the chest, and the painting at the same time. The shadow shrieked, lunged, clawed at me, but I held fast. I imagined the river contained, the spirits trapped, the balance restored. Energy surged through me, painful, consuming, like fire inside my veins. The shadows screamed, the room shook, jars shattered, objects fell, and for a moment, I thought I would be torn apart. But then, slowly, the chaos began to retract. The river in the painting stilled, The chest went silent. The shadows collapsed inward, sucked into nothingness, as if swallowed by the air itself. The girl knelt beside me, pale and trembling. It is done. For now. The house will always remember, but the barrier is strong. I collapsed to the floor, gasping, drenched in sweat, shaking. The room was silent again, peaceful, almost impossibly so. The painting glowed faintly, like a heartbeat, and the chest sat unmoving, lifeless. I realized something then: the house had chosen me. My grandfather had fought his battles, contained the spirits, protected the living, and now, it was my turn. I was the guardian. I would carry this burden, this responsibility, for as long as I lived. But I also understood something darker. The spirits were patient, eternal, cunning. They would test me again, and perhaps one day, I might fail. The girl's faint whisper lingered as she faded into the shadows. They are waiting, Lucas. Always waiting. But now, you are ready. I stood slowly, chest heaving, looking around the room, the house, the yard. Everything was quiet, calm, yet I knew it was fragile. The chest, the painting, the river, these were not just objects. They were a living prison, a boundary, and I was its keeper. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the house pressing on me, the shadows lurking just beyond sight. And though fear still clung to me, I also felt resolve. I would not falter. I would not let them escape. The house on Willow Creek Road would never be free of its ghosts. But neither would I. I was Lucas Bennett, the final guardian, and the darkness would never win.